I was 3 steps from climbing into my cab when I heard it. This small, shaking voice behind me. "Mister, don't start your truck. Please don't start it." Now I've hauled freight through blizzards, tire fires, and more roadside stupidity than I can count. But something in that kid's eyes cut straight through my pride. I killed my stride, followed his little finger back toward my steers, and saw the first piece of tape hanging loose under my fuel tank. By the time bomb squad rolled in and the yard was lit up red and blue, my company was already acting like I was the problem. Right up until somebody remembered the dusty old camera bolted in the corner of that shop. That footage didn't just show who wired my truck. It showed why he wanted me gone. If you want more real trucker stories, where the folks in the shadows finally get dragged out into the light, hit the subscribe button. Let us know from where you are watching from. Name's Jake Lawson. I've been dragging a box up and down the interstate since before half these dispatchers learned to shave. I'm not the best driver in the world, but I'll tell you what I am. Boring. Clean CDL. No at-faults. No rollovers, no hazmat leaks, no TikTok videos of me dancing in the left lane. I run out of a mid-sized outfit called Iron Line Logistics. 40-something trucks, hometown terminal, owners who still show up in jeans. Not perfect, but not the worst either. Most days it's just hook, book and look for a place to park like everybody else. The trouble started because I got a nasty little habit. I actually read my pre-trip. Not just the paper, what's on the metal. When something doesn't feel right, I don't move. That makes me useful to safety, annoying to dispatch, and absolutely radioactive to a certain kind of shop manager. Our shop manager's name was Randy Cole. Mid-40s, beer belly packed into a company polo, permanent sunglasses tan line. He came over from some mega carrier that ran trucks till they bled. Always bragged about keeping things rolling and not letting Dottie own his morning. First time we butted heads, I'd found a hairline crack in a brake shoe. You had to get in there with a flashlight and actually care to see it. I wrote it up. Randy rolled his eyes so hard I thought he'd sprain something. "Jake, you trying to marry this truck or drive it?" he said. "We'll get it next PM. Run your load, man." I folded my arms and leaned against the trailer. "I'm not dragging 40,000 pounds through the mountains on a crack like that. Fix it or get me another unit." He puffed up like a toad. "Dot's not here, Lawson." "Yeah," I said, "but if something happens, they will be. And so will every lawyer between here and the county line. Put it in the system, or I'm calling the safety line and logging vehicle out of service." We stared at each other until one of the owners, Mike, walked in. He listened for about 30 seconds, then looked at the brake, looked at Randy and said, "Change the damn shoe, Randy." "Jake, good catch." That was strike 1. Not for me. For Randy, in his head. Strike 2 came 6 months later, when I pitched the owners on cameras in the yard and the shop. We'd had a rash of mystery scrapes on trailers, blame bouncing between night shift and day shift, like a hot potato. I'd seen enough sketchy stuff in other yards to know how fast that can go sideways. "Look," I told them in the break room, pointing at a little brochure from some camera company. "You hang 2 or 3 of these in the shop, couple more in the yard, tie 'em into a recorder. Nobody has to babysit it, but when something happens, you've got proof." Mike loved the idea. His brother and co-owner Dale loved that it was tax deductible. They nodded, shook my hand, told me I thought like management. Randy stood in the doorway with his arms crossed, chewing his gum slow, staring like I'd pulled a knife on him. "You planning to drive, Lawson, or be our hall monitor?" he said later, cornering me by the coffee pot. "I'm planning to go home alive and on time," I said. "Cameras help with both." After the cameras went up, inventory started lining up a little more than it used to. Tools that walked before stayed put. And Randy's overtime hours, well, those dried up pretty quick once the owners could see who really needed to be on the clock. So when I tell you Randy had reasons to hate me, I don't mean just one. I'd cost him face, overtime, and his little fiefdom in that shop. I didn't realize just how deep his resentment ran until the week everything blew up. Literally. It was a Tuesday in late fall. You know the kind, cold enough that your breath hangs in the air, but not cold enough to numb the smell of diesel. I rolled into the yard just before dawn, thermos in one hand, lunchbox in the other, thinking about nothing more complicated than making it to the receiver before their outbound docks clogged. The sky was that pale grey that makes everything look flat, like you're walking through an old photograph. The yard was quiet, except for the backup beepers from the forklift crew and the hiss of a couple reefers idling in the corner. And you know what's funny? There was something wrong in that silence, and I felt it. Couldn't have told you what, but the hair on my arms was standing up before I ever heard that kid's voice. I just didn't know the entire yard. My CDL, my life, was sitting on a homemade bomb wired into my truck, waiting on me to turn a key. My rig was parked nose out by the fuel island, like it always was when I had an early departure. Unit 214, white Freightliner, with just enough miles to squeak when the plastic in the dash contracted, just enough rust on the frame to show she'd actually worked for a living. I was about 3 steps from swinging my lunchbox up on the step when I heard that voice behind me. "Mister." It was small, not scared yet, just urgent. I pitch with that little crack kids get when they're between baby and big. "Mister, don't start your truck. Please don't start it." Now, I'm a trucker. Guys yell my name across yards all the time. Kids, not so much. I turned, expecting maybe some neighbor's kid chasing a soccer ball that rolled in under a trailer. Instead, I see this little boy standing there in a hoodie 2 sizes too big, breathing fog like a tiny steam engine. He couldn't have been more than 8 or 9. Brown hair sticking out from under a beanie, backpack on one shoulder like he'd just peeled away from a bus stop. "What's up, little man?" I asked, forcing a smile. "You lost or what?" His eyes weren't on me, they were locked on the underside of my truck. He pointed, hand shaking. "I saw a man go under there," he said. "Back there. When it was still dark. He crawled under and he put something on your truck. I think it's bad. You hear a lot of nonsense in a yard. Pranks, tall tales. But this kid, his voice was tight like a guitar string. He believed what he was saying. "You sure it was my truck?" I said slowly. He nodded so hard his beanie almost flew off. "White truck with the red stripe and the big 214 right there. He was looking around and then he went under. He had like tape and a box." I looked at him, then looked at my truck. Rational brain says, probably nothing. Maybe a mechanic, maybe a sensor, maybe he's mixing trucks up. But there's another part of you, the part that's kept you alive through blown steer tires and black ice, that pays attention when the universe whispers in a kid's voice. I set my coffee on the step and crouched down next to the steer tire, heart ticking a little faster. At first I didn't see anything, just road grime and the usual sludge that collects where the frame meets the tank. Then the kid stepped closer and pointed tighter. "There," he said, "by that thing." Indeed, that's when I saw the tape. Silver duct tape, one piece hanging down like somebody forgot to press it all the way. Behind it, just barely visible, a corner of black plastic that didn't belong to any part I recognized. The tape crossed a couple wires that weren't supposed to be there, headed up toward the saddle tank. My mouth went dry. "What's your name, kid?" I asked, voice coming out lower than I meant. "Leo," he said. "Leo, you did good stopping me, okay? I'm gonna need you to stay back. Over by that fence. Don't touch anything. Don't let anybody else near the truck. You got that?" His eyes went wide. "Is it a bomb?" I swallowed hard. "I don't know, but we're not gonna find out the hard way." I backed up slow, pulled my phone out, and hit 911. My hands weren't shaking, but only because 20 years of tight spots had trained them not to. I gave the dispatcher our address, told her exactly what I saw, used the word device instead of bomb, because I knew how this was going to sound already. Within 10 minutes, the yard that was quiet as a graveyard lit up like a carnival. First a couple of local patrol cars, lights spinning, doors slamming. They pushed us behind a tape line and started eyeballing the truck through binoculars. Then the bomb squad, rolling in heavy big truck painted that particular government shade of "don't argue." Somewhere in there, the owners got the call. Mike showed up in a flannel and work boots, eyes bleary, looking like somebody had yanked him out of a dream with a cattle prod. "Randy!" Randy strutted out of the shop like this was just another morning, coffee in hand, safety vest half-zipped. "What the hell did you do, Lawson?" he shouted across the tape, loud enough for everybody to hear. "You screwing around with aftermarket crap again?" I stared at him, then at the cops who turned their heads like dogs hearing a whistle. "I called this in," I said. "Ask the dispatcher who called. Ask this kid who saw a man under my truck before dawn." "I touched nothing." Randy shrugged, lips curling. "You're the only one with a key, man. You were here first. You've been on this safety crusade like you're St. Dot. Somebody finally piss you off enough to make a point." There it was. The seed planted in front of uniforms and witnesses. Maybe the driver is the unstable one. Maybe he wired his own truck for attention or insurance or God knows what. Bomb squad slid their robot in, all business, and we waited. Longest 45 minutes of my life. I watched their faces, not their hands, because that's where the truth shows first. When one of them stiffened and waved for the others, I knew. They X-rayed the thing, talked into radios. Finally, one of them, a woman with Sanchez on her vest, walked over to the cluster of cops and managers, me included, and lifted her visor. "There is a device under that truck," she said. "It's real. Whoever planted it knew enough to be dangerous, not enough to be smart. We're going to make it safe." Leo reached for my hand without asking, and I let him hold on. His fingers were cold as ice. Sanchez looked at me with that particular kind of cop suspicion. "Mr. Lawson, you want to tell me why someone might put a bomb under your vehicle?" I should have been thinking about enemies. Instead, my brain went sideways into camera angles, shop bays, and one very specific man with a grudge and access to every inch of my truck. "I can think of a few reasons," I said slowly, "but the main one is back there in that shop, drinking coffee and pretending he doesn't know my name." Every head turned toward Randy. He didn't flinch, just took a slow sip and smirked at me like we were sharing a joke. For a second, watching those cops watch me, I realized something that turned my stomach colder than the morning air. If I didn't find proof of who did this, and fast, I wasn't just a victim in their eyes. I was a suspect with the perfect motive and the perfect opportunity. And I had no idea yet that the only thing standing between me and a set of cuffs was a dusty little camera bolted in the far corner of the shop that someone was already trying to erase. They hauled me downtown for questioning that afternoon. Not in cuffs, but close enough. You sit in the back of a cruiser with the cage between you and the front. It doesn't much matter whether they snapped metal on your wrists or not. You're still not getting out until they open the door. Detective stuff is not like TV. There's more waiting, more stale coffee, more forms that look like somebody spilled alphabet soup on them. They stuck me in a room with a table and 2 chairs and a camera in the corner that, for once, I was glad to see. Detective Moore introduced himself. Plain suit, tired eyes, wedding ring too tight. He slid my phone and wallet into a plastic tray and sat down across from me. "Mr. Lawson," he said. "You got any enemies?" I chuckled without humor. "You got a notebook big enough?" He didn't smile. "Let's start with the big ones." So I walked him through it. The brake shoe argument, the cameras, the way Randy's overtime had evaporated once everything got documented, the little digs in the break room, the last safety meeting where I'd pointed out that one of our shop reports had an inspection logged on a truck I knew wasn't in the building that day. "You're saying your shop manager had a reason to want you gone," Moore said, pen scratching. "I'm saying he had reasons to hate my guts," I answered. "Wanting me dead? That's a whole other level. But he had the access. And unless ghosts started doing maintenance, somebody had to crawl under that truck." Moore tapped the pen against the table. "We'll be pulling your company's security footage." My heart gave a little hopeful tick. Good. Because whatever you find on that tape is gonna help both of us. He left me stewing for another hour, then came back with a manila folder and a look that made my skin crawl. "Couple things," he said, flipping it open. "One, You've got a clean record. No violent incidents, no prior arrests. That's in your favor. He tapped another sheet. 2, you had the truck all day yesterday, brought it in late, and according to your company's logs, no one was assigned to work on it after you parked. That's impossible, I said. Night shift always does a once-over. Fluids, tires, that kind of thing. Not according to the work order, it's blank. He looked up at me. And according to your terminal manager, you've been fixated on safety lately, upset about being ignored, angry. I pictured Randy standing in Mike's office, spinning a story about the crazy driver with the martyr complex. So let me get this straight, I said, trying to keep my voice level. Your big theory is that I wired a bomb under my own truck in my own company's yard, then called 911 on myself, with a kid standing there watching because, what? I was mad about a work order? Moore didn't blink. I don't have a theory yet. I've got a device under your truck, a kid's statement that he saw a man go under there before dawn, and a company that says you're the only one who had a reason to throw a fit. The walls felt closer. You already pulled the camera footage? I asked. He hesitated, just a fraction. We're working on it. That hesitation told me more than any answer. Something was wrong with that tape, or somebody wanted him to think it was. They let me go that night, but not before handing me a thin envelope with administrative suspension stamped across the top. Iron Line was cooperating fully with the investigation. That meant I was off the schedule, off payroll, and off the property until further notice. I drove my own pickup home on autopilot, knuckles white on the steering wheel, Leo's scared eyes replaying in my head every time I blinked. Bomb under my truck, cops sniffing around, company acting like I was a liability instead of a victim. When I walked into my house, my wife Carla took one look at my face and put the dish towel down. What happened? She asked. I told her everything. The kid, the tape, the device, the questions. When I got to the part where my own manager hinted I might have had something to do with it, she covered her mouth with her hand. They can't really think that, she whispered. They can think whatever they want, I said. What matters is what they can prove. And right now, everybody's trying real hard to make sure that part stays blurry. Carla's a nurse, practical. She doesn't rattle easy. But that night, she insisted on double-checking the locks twice and keeping our bedroom window cracked so she could hear if anyone walked in the driveway. Lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. If the cameras and the logs were the only things between me and a very ugly future, I wasn't going to just sit back and hope the truth floated to the surface on its own. Hope is not a strategy, not in trucking, and definitely not when someone's trying to blow you into scrap metal. I was going to build my own case. Next morning I put on my work boots anyway. Not because I thought they'd let me work, but because I wanted Randy to see I wasn't crawling under a rock. The security guard at the gate held up a hand. Sorry, Jake. Orders from up top. You're not supposed to be on site. Tell Mike I'm here as a citizen, not an employee, I said. And that if he wants to avoid his name showing up on the evening news next to bomb and cover up, he should probably talk to me. It took 10 minutes, but eventually Mike walked out, jaw tight, eyes darting like he was afraid I'd brought a TV crew. Jake, you can't just show up, he hissed. You got cameras in that shop for a reason, I said. You pulled the footage yet? He glanced back toward the building. We tried. Randy says the camera in that corner crapped out last week. Nothing recorded overnight. My stomach dropped. That camera was fine 3 days ago, I said. I saw the feed myself in the office when you were showing off your new toys. Now suddenly the one angle that sees my truck just happens to die the night somebody wires a bomb under it. Mike's face went pale in a way I didn't like. Look, the cops are handling it. They took the DVR. I'm not supposed to talk about it. Behind him, across the lot, Randy stepped out of the shop bay and leaned against a toolbox, watching us. He lifted his coffee cup in a little mock toast and smiled. In that moment, with the yard humming and my truck quarantined behind police tape, it clicked for me just how bad this could get. If that tape was gone or corrupted, all I had was my word. against a man who'd been quietly getting ready to bury me for months. And somewhere out there, a 9-year-old kid who'd stuck his neck out for me was walking to school, not knowing he'd just painted a target on his own back. I found Leo before the cops did. Didn't take much detective work. The yard backs up to a row of small houses. Old mill worker places turned into rentals. Kids cut through the edge of the lot all the time on the way to the bus stop. I just followed the path of flattened grass and candy wrappers. Third house a block over, I saw the hoodie. Same color, same beanie, hanging on a porch railing. Leo was on the front step fighting his way into a too-big backpack. His mom stood in the doorway, phone pinched between her shoulder and cheek, looking like every overworked parent I've ever seen at a truck stop diner. "Morning," I said, keeping my tone soft as I walked up the sidewalk. "You must be Leo's mom." She narrowed her eyes, free hand hovering near the door. "Who's asking?" "Name's Jake," I said. "The truck driver from yesterday." I pointed toward the yard. "Your boy saved my life." Her expression flipped from suspicion to something else, fear, mostly. She hung up without saying goodbye to whoever was on the line. "Leo," she said sharply, "inside." He froze halfway to the steps. "But Mom, he's the—" "Inside, now." I raised my hands, palms out. "Ma'am, I'm not here to bother you. I just wanted to thank him proper, and to make sure the cops talked to you before someone else did." Her jaw clenched. "They came last night. Late. Woke us up. Asked my son a bunch of questions like he did something wrong." "Yeah," I said. "That tracks." She crossed her arms. "He told them what he saw. The man under your truck. The box. The tape. They wrote it down, and then they left, like we were something on their checklist." Leo peeked around her hip. "Am I in trouble?" he asked me, voice small. I shook my head. "No, buddy. You did exactly what you were supposed to. You saw something bad. You spoke up. That's a lot more than most grown-ups do." His mom's eyes softened just a hair. "You said he saved your life," she said. "You really mean that?" "Bomb squad confirmed it," I said. "That device would have gone off when I turned the key. He stopped me from ever turning it. I've got a wife and a mortgage and a bad back. I like being alive, so, yeah, he saved my life." She swallowed. "We didn't ask for any of this." "I know." I hesitated, then pushed on. "Look, I gotta be straight with you. The man who did this, he's not just some stranger who wandered in off the street. He's somebody with keys and clearance, and he already tried to make me look like the crazy one. If he thinks your boy can identify him—" "You think we're in danger," she finished for me. "I think you should be careful," I said. "Different routes to school, eyes open. And if anybody from the company or the union or whatever comes by asking questions that don't feel right, you call the detective or me right away." "Why would we call you?" she asked, brow furrowing. "Because I'm the one who owes him," I said, jerking my chin toward Leo. "And because I'm not wearing a badge or a tie. I don't have to wait for permission to get loud." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. "I'm Maria," she said quietly, "and thank you for not calling him a liar. The cop last night, he kept asking if Leo really saw what he thinks he saw. That's what they do when the truth's inconvenient," I said. "They wiggle around it." As if on cue, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something about the timing made my skin prickle. I stepped back a pace and answered. "Yeah, this is Jake." Static. Then a male voice, masked in that fake low-tone cowards use when they're trying not to be recognized. "You're talking too much, Lawson," the voice said. "If you'd just taken the hint and blown up like you were supposed to, a lot of people's lives would be easier right now." My heart stopped for half a beat. "Who is this?" I said, even though I already knew. "You want your little hero to make it to his next birthday," the voice continued, ignoring the question. "Tell him to keep his mouth shut about what he saw under that truck." The call clicked off. I stared at the phone, then at Leo and Maria. She knew something was wrong from my face alone. "Was that about us?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "It was." Her hand went to Leo's shoulder, clutching hard enough to make him wince. "We're calling the police." "Absolutely," I said. "But first I'm calling someone else." She blinked. "Who?" An old buddy of mine, I said. Drives for a bigger outfit across town now. Used to be an IT tech. Helped set up our camera system. If anybody can tell me whether that shop footage really crapped out the night of the bomb. I looked back toward the yard, where my truck sat like a crime scene centerpiece behind yellow tape. It's him. And if that tape exists, I'm going to get eyes on it before Randy buries it for good. Somewhere between the hum of the yard and Maria's breathing, a new kind of engine started up inside me. I wasn't just a driver who dodged a bomb anymore. I was a man with skin in the game, and somebody had just threatened a kid who saved my life. That was the moment I stopped waiting for justice to happen and started planning how to drag it out by the throat. My friend's name is Tyler Briggs. Used to be our in-house computer guy before Ironline decided to outsource IT to a company that charges twice as much and cares half as much. Tyler took his brains somewhere it'd be appreciated and started driving nights for a bigger fleet, troubleshooting routers and ELDs on the side for fun. I caught him just as he was waking up, voice thick with sleep. "Jake, you die or something. Haven't heard from you in months." "Almost did," I said. "Listen, you remember the camera system you helped Mike put in our yard last year?" He snorted. "You mean the one I told him not to cheap out on?" "Yeah. Why?" "Cops say the shop camera that points at Bay 3 crapped out the night somebody wired a bomb under my truck," I said. "DVR's in their evidence locker now. Before that, Randy says it was dead. Does that sound right to you?" Silence hummed on the other end for a second. When Tyler spoke again, he was wide awake. "No," he said. "Those cameras don't just die and resurrect like Jesus. If the feed dropped, the DVR logs it. If somebody unplugged it, that's in there too." "You sure it's the only one that saw your truck?" "It's the best angle," I said. "Corner near the parts cage, looking down across the bay doors. My rig was parked nose out, just within its view." "Then either it was conveniently unplugged," Tyler said, "or someone is lying. Either way, the logs will scream bloody murder if you know what you're looking at." I hesitated. "And how do we look at them if the DVR's already evidence?" Tyler sighed. "You're not going to like my answer. Try me. Lawyer up," he said. "Get someone to motion for an independent forensic copy. Make it about your defense. They'll squawk, but the judge will probably grant it. Meanwhile—" He paused. "Meanwhile, check the cloud mirror." "The what?" "I set up a mirror device," he said. "Cheaper model, smaller drive, only keeps low-res clips for 30 days. I put it in so if the main DVR ever got stolen, they wouldn't lose everything." "You told Mike that?" I asked. "Yeah," Tyler said. "Told Randy too. He was pissed we were wasting money on redundancy. If he remembers it exists, he probably thinks it's just a dead box." My pulse kicked up. "Where is it?" "Inside the metal cabinet in the old server closet," he said. "Top shelf, back left. Looks like a cable modem with a green light when it's on. If it's still plugged in, it might have your night, unless 30 days have passed." "Not even close," I said. "Then you better move," Tyler said. "Because if I'm right about Randy, he's either already pulled it, or he has no idea it's even there. You've got a coin flip." I hung up and drove straight back to Ironline. The guard at the gate started to wave me away again, but I rolled my window down and pitched my voice so everyone at the fuel island could hear. "You got a warrant that says I can't pick up my personal things from the driver room?" I asked. "Because last I checked, I'm suspended, not in prison." He hesitated. "Technically, I wasn't wrong." He stepped aside, muttering into his radio. I parked near the back and walked in like I belonged there, nodding at a couple drivers who gave me wide-eyed looks and quickly pretended to be very interested in their phones. Inside, the air smelled like coffee, grease, and tension. Randy was by the whiteboard, talking to one of the owners, Dale this time. He saw me and his face did that fake surprise thing we all learn in high school drama. "Lawson!" he boomed. "Didn't we make it clear you're not supposed to be here?" "I'm here for my stuff," I said. "Got some personal gear in my locker. Didn't realize that was a federal offense." Dale, to his credit, looked uncomfortable. "Just make it quick, Jake," he said. We're trying to keep things calm around here. I nodded like a good little soldier and headed toward the driver room. At the last second, I took a left instead of a right, sliding down the narrow hallway toward the old server closet. My boots thudded on the tile. Nobody stopped me. The door to the closet was half open, a "Do Not Unplug" sign taped crooked to the front. Inside, it was a tangle of wires, dust bunnies and metal shelves loaded with gear. I flicked on the light and scanned the top shelf. There it was. Small black box, single green LED winking like a sleepy eye. "Come on, sweetheart," I muttered, stepping in. "Tell me you've been doing your job." I wasn't stupid enough to yank it. I didn't need to. A quick glance at the back showed an Ethernet cable and a power cord, both plugged in. I snapped a couple photos with my phone, zooming in on the model number and the status lights. Then I heard footsteps in the hall. "You lost, Lawson," Randy's voice right behind me. I turned, doing my best impression of a man who just accidentally wandered into the wrong closet. "Looking for paper towels," I said. "Spilled my coffee." He stepped into the doorway, blocking most of the exit. His eyes slid past me to the shelves and landed on the box. The green light reflected tiny in his pupils. "What you doing messing with IT crap?" he asked, voice flat now. "Thought you were unemployed." "I'm suspended," I said. "Big difference." He smirked. "Yeah, for now." He reached past me, fingers brushing the casing of the box, like he'd only just noticed it existed. "This junk can't even keep the Wi-Fi from dropping," he muttered. "No wonder that camera cut out." I watched his hand hover near the power cord. I could see the gears turning. Unplug, claim it must have been that way for weeks, eliminate one more piece of the puzzle. "You sure you want to do that with an active police investigation going on?" I asked quietly. He froze, eyes snapping back to mine. "Because here's the thing, Randy," I continued, keeping my voice low. "My buddy who set this system up, he told me this little box keeps 30 days of backup clips. Different drive, different logs. Cops have the main DVR, sure. But this," I tapped the metal rack lightly, "this is like their insurance policy's insurance policy." A muscle ticked in his jaw. "You're bluffing," he said. "Maybe," I said. "Maybe not. But if that green light goes off before the detectives get a warrant to image it, somebody's going to have a whole lot of explaining to do. And I promise you, they are not going to be looking at the driver who's been screaming for more cameras for a year." For the first time since all this started, I saw something crack behind Randy's sunglasses tan. Not guilt, not yet, just calculation, risk assessment. He snatched his hand back like the box was hot. "You're not supposed to be in here," he said, stepping aside. "Get your crap and get out before I call the cops." I walked past him, heart pounding. I half expected to feel something sharp between my ribs, but he just watched me go, jaw working. Out in the parking lot, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, my throat went tight. It was a photo of Leo, taken from across the street as he walked toward his house, backpack slung over one shoulder. No caption, just the image. I looked back toward the shop, where the little green light on that backup box was still shining behind the closet window I could just barely see from where I stood. I had 2 clocks ticking now. One was digital, counting down the days until that backup overwritten the night of the bomb. The other was human, measured in school days and bus rides, in how long an angry, cornered man would let a 9-year-old witness walk around untouched. And I knew, deep in my bones, that if I didn't beat both clocks, the next story about our yard on the evening news wasn't just going to be about a bomb under my truck. It was going to be about a kid who warned me and paid the price. I'm a trucker, not a lawyer. But even I knew when things hit the "I need a suit" level. After that photo of Leo hit my phone, I drove straight home and dug through the junk drawer until I found a business card I hadn't thought about in years. Traffic attorney I'd used on a bogus lane change ticket. On the back he'd scribbled, "If your company ever tries to hang you out to dry, call me. I like a good fight." His name was Mark Garrison, ex-prosecutor. Talked like a preacher, billed like a surgeon. He picked up on the third ring. Garrison Law. Mark, it's Jake Lawson, big white freightliner. I cried in your office when DOT tried to say I was speeding downhill with a full load. He laughed once. I remember the case. Steamrolled them. What's going on? How's your schedule for federal level insane? I asked. I laid it out for him. Bomb under the truck. Kid witness. Company leaning toward crazy driver did it. Shop cameras that mysteriously failed like they'd caught a virus, right when they might have seen something important. Backup box, Randy almost unplugged. And now, threats against a child. He didn't interrupt much. Just the sound of pen on paper and the occasional low grunt. When I finished, he blew out a breath. You're not calling me about a lane change ticket this time, are you? No, I said. I'm calling because I'm not going to prison for something I didn't do, and I'm not letting some shop rat scare a 9-year-old into silence. Okay, he said, voice shifting into gear. First thing, do not contact that manager again directly. No more solo hero trips into closets. If he so much as stubs his toe, they'll say you pushed him. Second, forward every text, every call log, every voicemail to me. Third, I'm filing motions today for independent access to any and all video devices and logs before they're altered or lost. That includes your mystery backup box. What about the threats to the kid? I asked. That photo? I'll loop the detectives in with that, he said, and I'll make it very clear that if anything happens to that child, this stops being a local workplace incident and becomes the kind of case that ruins careers. Fear gets people moving. True to his word, 3 hours later, Detective Moore called me. You've been busy, Mr. Lawson, he said. Your attorney is enthusiastic. Enthusiastic beats lazy, I said. He tell you about the backup drive? He did, Moore said. And guess what? When we checked with our tech guys, not one of them had even heard of it. Your company never disclosed its existence when we seized the DVR. Shocking, I said dryly. We've initiated a warrant addendum, he continued. I'm heading to your yard right now with our digital forensics team. Your presence isn't required, but if you happen to be nearby, I won't kick you off the property this time. I was already halfway to my keys. Funny how that works. By the time I rolled through the gate, the scene looked different, less panicky, more surgical. Unmarked sedan, van with a county IT logo. Moore standing near the office door, talking to Mike and Dale, while Randy hovered a couple yards away, pretending to be deeply interested in a clipboard. I hung back near the driver room, just close enough to listen if the wind cooperated. I don't know what that box is, Randy was saying. We never used it. Probably an old router or something. That's interesting, Moore replied. Because your former IT employee says he installed it and told both of you exactly what it does. Ray, he flicked his eyes toward Mike and Dale, who looked like two kids caught smoking behind the gym. Look, Mike said, we trusted our people. We didn't think. That's part of the problem, Moore said flatly. Good news is the backup's still powered. If we're lucky, it still has the night of the incident. They disappeared into the building with the techs. Randy shot me a look on his way past. Flat, dark, no more jokes. He knew exactly what they were about to find. I leaned against the wall outside the server closet, feeling the vibrations as the techs moved stuff around inside. For once, I wasn't the guy in trouble. I was the guy waiting to see if the anchor I'd grabbed onto was bolted to something solid or soaking wet drywall. After a while, one of the techs came out cradling a laptop. He spoke quietly to Moore, who nodded, then looked over at me. Mr. Lawson, he called, you might want to see this. In his voice, for the first time since all this started, there was something like respect. We stepped into a little conference room. They'd set the laptop up on the table. The image paused on a grainy black and white shot of the shop bay. It was time-stamped 03:17 a.m. The bay doors were down, lights dimmed. My truck's nose was just visible at the bottom of the frame. Watch, the tech said, hitting play. The footage stuttered for a second, then smoothed out. From the left edge of the screen, a figure entered, hoodie, work pants, moving like he knew exactly where every tool and floor drain was. He walked straight across the bay, paused by the door that led out to the yard, then stepped out of the frame. A few seconds later, he reappeared outside, barely visible in the top corner, crawling under the shadow where my truck sat parked. Leo hadn't been lying. There he was, a man, under my truck, in the dead of night. The angle wasn't great. You couldn't see his face, but you could see other things, the way he moved, the height, the build, the heavy work boots, the key ring clipped to his belt that flashed silver every time it caught a bit of stray light. "That's not you," Moore said unnecessarily. "Different height, different build." "No," I said softly. "That's not me." The tech rewound and played the first part again. "Freeze it when he hits the light," I said. He did. The figure passed under one of the motion lights, hood slipping back just enough that you could see a glimpse of hairline and jaw before he ducked out to the yard. It wasn't a clear face shot, but it was familiar. "Can you pull up footage from earlier that day?" I asked. "Inside the shop?" "Sure," the tech said, fingers flying. He jumped back 12 hours. There was the shop again, now alive with movement, mechanics walking, forklifts gliding through, Randy barking at some poor second-shift kid, coffee cup glued to his hand, key ring at his belt, boots, gate, everything. "Now freeze him," I said when Randy walked under the same light. They did. Side by side, they put the two stills up on the screen, the night figure with the partially visible jawline, and Randy from that afternoon in full resolution. The room went quiet in that particular way you only get when everyone knows the answer, but nobody wants to be the first to say it. Moore cleared his throat. "We'll have our analysts do a formal comparison," he said. "Body metrics, gait analysis, all that. But off the record?" He looked straight at me. His jaw tightened. "Off the record, Jake," he said. "That's your shop manager, crawling under your truck with a box at 3 in the morning. For the first time since the kid shouted my name in the yard, I felt my shoulders drop a fraction. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. The man I'd been pointing at with words now had a shadow twin pointing at him from the screen. But the relief didn't last long because my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Another picture. This time, it wasn't Leo. It was my wife, Carla, coming out of the hospital at the end of her shift, captured from across the parking lot. The message under it read, "Stop digging, Lawson, or we stop being subtle." And that's when I realized we weren't just dealing with one pissed-off shop manager anymore. He had help, or at least he thought he did. You know that feeling when you're driving in thick fog and suddenly break out into clear air? That's what it felt like when I walked out of that conference room. An hour earlier, I'd been the guy everybody side-eyed as maybe he did it to himself. Now, with that grainy footage, I'd flipped positions, from suspect to weapon. A witness with motive, sure, but also with receipts. My lawyer, Mark, met me in the parking lot, tie loosened, hair blown sideways from the winter wind. "They give you a peek?" he asked. "Oh yeah," I said. "We got ourselves a ghost in a hoodie who walks just like Randy and wears his boots." "Good," Mark said. "We'll push for them to freeze any disciplinary action against you until their investigation is complete. No way they get to fire you while the guy in charge of your truck shows up on camera crawling under it." I laughed once. "You're assuming they care about fair." "I'm assuming they care about liability," he said. "Your company blows this? They're not just looking at you. They're looking at every driver who's ever filed a complaint about that shop." We walked toward my pickup together. I could feel eyes on us. Drivers, office staff, yard dogs. Word travels fast in a small fleet. A couple guys gave me those little chin nods that say, "We heard. We're with you, even if we're scared to say it out loud." As I opened my truck door, a voice behind me cut through the air. "Lawson." "Randy." I turned slowly. He stood by the smoker's barrel, a cigarette burning between his fingers, jaw set in a hard line. No more jokes, no smirks, just flat anger and something else. Fear, hiding behind it. Mark stepped half a foot in front of me on instinct, like a lawyer-shaped shield. Any conversation you want to have with my client needs to go through me, he said. Randy ignored him. His eyes were locked on me. You think you won something today? He said. Because some blurry camera caught a shadow walking under your truck? I think we're closer to the truth than we were yesterday, I said. He took a drag, exhaled slow. Truth is, nobody upstairs wants this to be what it is, he said. They want it to be some drifter who slipped through the fence while the cameras just happened to be offline. They want it clean, simple. No one with a company polo involved. Is that what you're going to tell them? I asked. That a drifter stole your keys, walked like you, wore your boots, and knew exactly which bay to use? He flicked ash into the barrel. You think they don't know how much money you cost them? He said. Extra parts, extra downtime, more write-ups. You think I'm the only one who'd sleep better if you disappeared? There it was, the shift I'd been waiting for. He wasn't just speaking for himself anymore. He was speaking for they, for upstairs, for folks who'd been letting him run his little dictatorship because it kept the wheels turning and the spreadsheets green. You tried to kill me over parts invoices, I said. You tried to make it look like I torched my own truck. You tried to scare a kid into shutting up. That sound like something the owners signed off on, Randy? Because if it is, this place is more rotten than I thought. For a split second, his eyes flickered. Just enough. Then he smiled. Not the joking coffee cup smile. Something meaner, tighter. You keep talking like that, he said, and maybe you live long enough to find out. He flicked his cigarette on the concrete and crushed it under his heel, then walked back toward the shop without looking back. Mark let out a low whistle. He just threatened you with a witness standing 10 feet away, he said, and I am a great witness. Yeah, I said, watching Randy's back. He's scared. Scared people do stupid things. Scared people also get sloppy, Mark said. We use that. That night, I met with Detective Moore and Mark together. We sat around my dining room table, my wife listening from the kitchen, while Leo's drawing of my truck, crayons and all, peeked out from my fridge door, where I'd stuck it. We're shifting focus, Moore said, flipping open a folder. Between the backup footage and your old safety reports, we've got enough to show a pattern. Cuts corners, resents oversight, had access. But not enough for an arrest, I guessed. Not yet, he said. The DA wants more than he moves like the guy in the video. They want direct linkage, materials, communications, something tying him to the device itself. Whoever supplied the parts, whoever he talked to about it. I thought about the threats, the photos, the way the voice on the phone had sounded slightly off, like it knew me but was masking itself. What about the texts and calls, I asked. The threats against Leo and my wife. We're subpoenaing the records, Moore said. If we can connect those burner calls back to a phone he bought, a store he visited, or a tower he pinged from his house, it tightens the noose. Mark nodded. In the meantime, we keep you loud, he said. The more public you are as a victim, the harder it is for them to quietly make you disappear. Same with the kid. Public how? I asked. Social media, maybe, Mark said. Press, if we need to. But I've got something better in mind if we can line up the timing. He slid a sheet of paper across the table. It was an email printout, forwarded from somewhere I didn't recognize. What's this? I asked. A notice from the state DOT, he said. They're scheduling a safety stand-down at your company in 2 weeks. Surprise audit turned into a full-blown town hall. They want to talk about maintenance culture, log accuracy, all that fun stuff. Carla set a cup of coffee down in front of each of us. Let me guess, she said. They picked Iron Line because somebody tipped them off. Mark grinned just a little. Let's just say when a truck bomb shows up on the local news, regulators pay attention. Moore tapped the email. They asked if there were any relevant recent incidents they should be aware of, he said. I told them yes, and I told them there's a driver who might be willing to tell the room exactly how close your company came to killing him to save a few bucks. I stared at the page, imagining it. Me standing in front of all my co-workers, the owners, Randy, with a DOT rep and a sheriff's deputy off to the side, rolling that footage on a big screen. A public reckoning. Not just for Randy, but for every pair of eyes that had looked at my complaints and decided they were inconvenient. "You want me to be your poster boy," I said quietly. "We want you to tell the truth," Moore said, under watchful eyes. "And if they try to shut you down," Mark added, "they do it in front of regulators. That's leverage." I thought back to Leo's tiny hand gripping mine in the yard, to the photo of my wife, some coward's lens on her back. "Fine," I said. "I'll speak." "Good," Mark said, standing, "because something tells me that Safety Town Hall is where our friend Randy is going to either crack or do something so desperate we won't even need the lawyers anymore." I walked them out to their cars, feeling the weight of what we were setting up. This wasn't just a fight over one truck anymore. It was a fight over a whole way of doing business. What I didn't know, standing there under the porch light, was that before we got to that town hall, everything was going to get a hell of a lot worse. Because cornered animals don't just growl, they bite. It happened on a Thursday night, 3 days before the town hall. I was just drifting off on the couch, some late-night trucking documentary droning in the background, when my phone lit up with Maria's number. My heart stuttered. She never called after 9 unless something was wrong. I answered on the first ring. "Maria?" Her voice came through ragged and high. "Jake, they broke my window. They threw something in." In the background I heard Leo crying, the sharp, panicked kind. "Are you safe?" I cut in. "Is anyone hurt?" "Glass everywhere," she sobbed. "The brick went through the TV, thank God not the couch. Leo was in the kitchen." "Get away from the front windows," I said. "Go to the back room, lock the door. I'm calling 911 and then I'm coming." Carla was already grabbing her keys. "I heard," she said. "Let's move." We beat the cops there by maybe 2 minutes. Maria's front room looked like a war zone. Shattered glass, TV sideways, brick on the carpet with a note taped to it. I picked it up with 2 fingers by the edges, heart pounding. In block letters, cut from what looked like a magazine, it read, "Say you lied or next time it won't be a brick." Maria sat on the floor, arms around Leo, both of them shaking. Leo's eyes were huge. "Did I do something bad?" he asked me as I crouched down. "No, buddy," I said. "You did something brave. Bad people don't like brave kids, that's all." Cops showed. Moore showed, face thunderous when he saw the note. Evidence bags, photos, the whole routine. This time, though, there was a different flavor to his questions. Less, "Maybe this is overblown." More, "We are officially out of patience." "We're not playing anymore," he muttered, sliding the note into a plastic sleeve. "Threatening you is one thing, Lawson. Threatening a child witness, DA's gonna salivate." "Feels like we're always one step behind," I said. "They act, we react. We need to flip that." "We will," he said. "That town hall? Consider it a trap with nice folding chairs. In the meantime, Maria and Leo are coming with us." Maria stiffened. "Where?" "Safe house," he said. "Unmarked location, patrol outside. You're not going back here until this blows over. Understood?" She looked at Leo, then at me. I nodded. "Go," I said. "I'll bring whatever you need from here tomorrow." As their cruiser pulled away, Carla slipped her hand into mine. "You okay?" she asked. I laughed once, bitter. "Define okay. I've got a bomb under my truck, a shop manager who wants me dead, a kid hiding in a safe house because he told the truth, and 3 days until I stand in front of my whole company and say it out loud." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You could still walk away," she said softly. "Find another job. Leave this mess behind." I thought about it. Imagine myself parking my rig at some other yard where the worst problem was a cranky dispatcher and a broken microwave. Safer, maybe. Easier, definitely. But the brick, the notes, the photo of my wife, Leo's shaking hand, walking away didn't just feel like quitting my job. It felt like quitting being the kind of man I could look at in the mirror. "Nah," I said finally. "If I bail now, I'm telling every driver in that place they're on their own. And I'm telling Leo it's not worth speaking up." She sighed. "I knew you were going to say that." We held each other in the ruined living room for a few minutes, the smell of broken drywall and cold air pressing around us. Next day, the company made their move. I got a certified letter in the mail. Inside, corporate letterhead from their outside HR consultant. Dear Mr. Lawson, given the ongoing investigation, we must inform you that your employment status has been changed from suspended to terminated pending outcome. You are prohibited from representing yourself as an employee of Iron Line Logistics in any capacity, including at upcoming safety events. My hands clenched so hard the paper crinkled. I called Mark. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. They really sent this, he said. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. How is this perfect? I snapped. They just fired me. On paper, he said. In reality, they just retaliated against a cooperating witness days before a DOT event. You know how regulators feel about that? Like Christmas came early. We added it to the pile. Texts, calls, photos, brick note, termination letter. A tower of bad decisions, one on top of another. By Saturday night, I was as wound up as a brand new air hose. No truck to pre-trip, no route to plan, just the ticking clock until Monday's town hall. Sunday afternoon, my phone rang again. Unknown number, but local area code. This is Jake, I answered. Mr. Lawson? Female voice this time, calm, professional. This is Angela Price with the State Department of Transportation. I'm the lead investigator for Monday's carrier safety stand-down at Iron Line. Didn't think DOT worked Sundays, I said. She chuckled. Transport doesn't sleep. Neither do we, not really. Detective Moore filled me in on the broad strokes of your situation. I wanted to hear from you directly, so I told her, short version for once. When I finished, there was a pause. Thank you, she said. On Monday, I want you sitting right up front, not in the back, not in the hallway, front and center. When I ask for driver perspectives, I'd like you to share your story. You think they'll even let me in the building? I asked, thinking about that letter. Oh, they will, she said. Because the moment they try to bar you, I'll shut the meeting down and start writing violation reports in the parking lot. They can choose which show they want. I smiled, despite myself. You don't mess around, do you? Mr. Lawson, she said, I've read too many crash reports that start with driver reported defect, truck was not taken out of service. If you're telling the truth about what you flagged and how they responded, your story is exactly why we're here. We hung up, and for the first time in days, I slept like a human being instead of a wired-up CB radio. Monday morning, I put on my cleanest pair of jeans, a button-up shirt Carla insisted on ironing, and my scuffed work boots. I wasn't going in as an employee, but I was damn sure going in as a driver. The parking lot was packed. DOT vehicles, sheriff's cruisers, drivers' personal cars. Inside, the big break room had been turned into a makeshift auditorium. Folding chairs, projector screen, coffee table pushed against the wall. I walked in and felt 100 eyes on me. Some friendly, some nervous, some flat-out hostile. Randy was there too, in the back corner, arms crossed, jaw clenched, our eyes met. He looked smaller somehow, like the walls of his world had moved in overnight, and he hadn't found the exit yet. At the front of the room, Angela Price stood by the projector, a stack of folders in her hand. She caught my eye and nodded toward the front row, where a seat had been left empty. I sat. "Morning, everyone," she said, voice carrying just enough to cut through the murmur. "We're here today because of a pattern of maintenance and reporting issues at this carrier, and because one of those issues nearly turned into a tragedy." She clicked a remote. The screen behind her lit up with the Iron Line logo. Then, with another click, it faded to a black and white shot of the shop bay at 3:17 a.m. A murmur rolled through the room. "This footage comes from a secondary backup device that was not initially disclosed to investigators," she said. "We obtained a copy last week." She hit play. There it was again. The figure, the hoodie, the crawl under my truck. Someone behind me swore under their breath. "You all know Mr. Lawson," she said, gesturing toward me. He was driving this unit. He reported a suspicious object after a child warned him not to start the vehicle. Bomb squad confirmed the device was real. She let that hang for a second. What you may not know, she continued, is what we've learned about your maintenance culture, your internal complaints, and the way some of your staff responded when one of you tried to do the right thing. Every eye in the room swung between the screen and the back corner, where Randy had gone very still. "Jake," she said, turning to me, "would you mind telling your co-workers what you told me?" I stood up, took a breath, looked at the faces in front of me. Guys I'd shared truck stop meals with, ladies who ran dispatch, mechanics who'd rolled their eyes at my write-ups and secretly fixed things anyway. I told them about the cracked brake shoe, the argument, the cameras, the safety meetings. The nights I'd been laughed at for taking an extra 5 minutes to check a tire. I told them about Leo, about that little voice in the yard, the tape under my tank, the bomb squad saying if I'd turned the key, I'd be confetti. I told them about the threats, the photos, the brick. When I finished, the room was dead quiet. Angela looked toward the back. "Mr. Cole," she said to Randy, using his last name. "Do you have anything you'd like to say before we continue?" His eyes darted to the door, then to Mike and Dale, then to me. For a second, I thought he was going to bolt. Instead, he did something I honestly didn't expect. He smiled, a brittle, angry thing, and said, "Yeah, I've got something to say, but if we're doing this, we're not just talking about me." And that was the moment I realized the bomb under my truck might not be the only thing he'd wired up. He was about to blow up the whole room. Randy walked to the front of the room like a man walking to the gallows, but there was a twitchy energy in him too, the energy of someone who'd been cornered and finally decided if he was going down, he wasn't going alone. Angela stepped back a pace, giving him space but not the microphone. "You understand anything you say here can be used against you, Mr. Cole," she said. "What are you going to use?" He snapped. "Your blurry ghost video." He jabbed a finger at the screen. "That could be anybody under that truck, some tweaker who slipped through the fence." "Is that your statement?" she asked calmly. He laughed bitterly. "My statement is your cameras don't show the whole picture, and neither does he." He jerked his chin at me. "Enlighten us," Mark said from his spot along the wall. He'd insisted on being there. As an observer, Randy looked at him, then at the room. "You all think this is about me hating Lawson because he cost me some overtime," he said. "That's part of it, sure. Guy's been a thorn in my side since the first time he refused to roll on a soft brake shoe." A couple drivers shifted in their seats. The ones who'd been there for that argument looked anywhere but at me. "But the reason upstairs is real quiet right now," he went on. "The reason they pushed that termination through and hoped he'd go away? It's because if the state digs too deep into maintenance culture around here, they're going to find a whole lot more than one rogue shop manager." Angela folded her arms. "Such as?" Randy gestured toward Mike and Dale. "Ask them how many times we've been told to pencil whip a dotty inspection so a hot load didn't get delayed," he said. "Ask them about the owner-operator that wrecked last year in the canyon after I told them his brakes were toast, and they sent him out anyway. Ask them who signed off on the policy that says, if it's not a visible leak, it's not our problem." Mike flushed. "You're twisting." "Am I?" Randy snapped. "Who's been telling me to keep trucks rolling no matter what for the last 5 years? I didn't write that on my own." The room buzzed, angry bees waking up. Mark stepped in just enough to be heard. "All very interesting," he said, "but unless you're admitting you wired the device and trying to blame it on culture, we're wandering off topic." Randy's eyes flashed. "I didn't try to kill him," he said. "Not like that." That "like that" hung heavy. Angela's voice was knife-sharp now. "Did you install the device under his truck, Mr. Cole?" Silence. He looked at the screen again, at the frozen image of the hooded man under the truck, at the way everyone's eyes sliced into his back. "No," he said finally. "I didn't build it, I just looked the other way." A low murmur ran through the room. Somebody in the back whispered, "Bull." "Who did build it?" Moore asked from the other side of the room. "I hadn't even seen him come in." Randy swallowed. "Guy I know," he muttered. "Owes me a favor. He's good with electronics. Used to rig hunting cabins, that kind of thing." "You gave him access to the yard?" Angela pressed. "No," Randy said quickly. "He hopped the fence. I just told him which truck would be parked where." My stomach flipped. That was almost worse. Not just one man gone bad, but a whole side channel of scum funneled into our yard. "Why Jake?" Moore asked. "You got 40 trucks, 40 drivers. Why him?" The room held its breath. Randy's glare landed on me like a physical weight. "Because he made me look weak," he said. "Because every time he refused to take a unit with a minor defect, it made me look like a slacker. Because he pushed for cameras that killed my overtime and gave the owners a front row seat to my day. Because he called OSHA on us last year, and I know it was him, even though nobody ever proved it." I hadn't. For the record, I hadn't made that OSHA call. But I'd thought about it. Hard. Apparently I didn't have to. Life had just decided to treat me like I did. "So you decided to scare him," Angela said slowly. "To teach him a lesson. And with an explosive device under a diesel tank in a yard full of people." Randy's shoulders sagged a little. "It wasn't supposed to actually blow," he muttered. "Guy said it'd just spark and smoke, freak him out, make him think twice about causing problems." "Your guy lied," Moore said flatly. "Bomb squad says that charge would have ruptured the tank. You'd have been lucky not to set the whole yard on fire." Randy's eyes flickered. "How was I supposed to know?" "Because you're not an idiot," I said, finally stepping in. "You might be reckless, you might be petty, but you know what a spark and diesel fumes does, Randy. You've worked around it your whole life." He stared at me, breathing hard. For a second, I thought he was going to lunge. Instead, he sagged into one of the front chairs like the air had gone out of him. "I didn't send those messages to the kid," he muttered. That was somebody else." "Who?" Moore asked. Randy hesitated, eyes going back to Mike and Dale again. "We had a meeting," he said slowly. "After the cops first came sniffing around. You were there." He jabbed a finger at Mike. "You said if Lawson didn't calm down, we'd have to find a way to shut him up before he shut us down. You said we were all on the hook if the Fed started poking." "That's not how I—" Mike started, but Angela held up a hand. "We'll get to management," she said. "Mr. Cole, I'm going to say this one more time clearly. You are admitting you coordinated with someone to place an unauthorized device under a commercial vehicle with the intent to intimidate a driver. That correct?" His silence was answer enough. Moore sighed, pulled out his cuffs. "Randy Cole, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit aggravated assault, making terroristic threats, and tampering with a motor vehicle, among other charges," he said. "You have the right to remain silent." The room watched, jaws slack, as the man who'd lorded over our shop for years got his hands pulled behind his back. Some drivers looked shaken, others looked relieved, like someone had finally put a bully in the corner. As they walked him out, he twisted enough to look back at me. "This won't fix it," he snarled. "Even if they pin this on me, nothing changes. They'll just find another me." "Maybe," I said. "But whoever comes next is going to know they're being watched. That's a start." After they took him away, the room was buzzing. Angela clapped her hands once, sharp. "We're not done," she said. "Arresting one man doesn't fix culture. We're opening a formal investigation into Iron Line's maintenance practices. That includes audit of every inspection, every defect report, every time a driver wrote something up that didn't get addressed." She held up my old safety complaint, photocopied and highlighted. "This one," she said, "is now Exhibit A." I felt something unclench in my chest I didn't know had been there. My words, the ones that had been ignored, were suddenly carved into the story in ink. As she went on about consent decrees and corrective action plans, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Moore. "We just picked up your electronics guy at his trailer. He talked fast. Your brick thrower, too." They flipped. "Case is getting bigger. We need a full sit-down with you and the kid tomorrow." I looked up at the projector. where the still frame of the hooded figure had been replaced with a slide titled "Next Steps, Safety Reform." For the first time, "Next Steps" didn't sound like a threat, they sounded like a chance. You'd think after the big dramatic arrest in the Doty show, things would calm down. They didn't, not for a while. For the next few weeks, my life turned into a weird mashup of trucking, courtroom drama, and safety seminar. I sat through interviews with the DA's office, going over every conversation I'd ever had with Randy about being too picky. They played the jailhouse calls, where he'd tried to talk tough to his buddies and ended up admitting more than his lawyer would ever recommend. The electronics guy, real name Travis, rolled over on him completely. Said Randy approached him at a bar with the idea, gave him a drawing of where my truck parked, paid him cash, claimed he never meant to hurt anybody, which would have been more convincing if Bomb Squad hadn't found his internet search history full of phrases like "fuel tank explosion radius." The brick thrower turned out to be a kid, barely out of high school, paid under the table to scare some snitch and his brat. When he saw he might be sharing a cell with the people who'd hired him, his courage evaporated. His statement tied the threats directly back to Randy's prepaid phone and to a couple of very troubling conversations with management about keeping Lawson in line. Mike and Dale both lawyered up. They didn't get perp-walked like Randy, but they did get grilled by regulators and the press. The local news ran a story. Trucker saved by child witness after bomb found under rig. Shop manager arrested. They interviewed me on camera, standing in front of Unit 214, now cleared and repaired. I kept it simple. "I'm alive because a kid paid attention and spoke up," I said. "Everything after that is just making sure no other driver has to depend on luck to make it home." Maria and Leo moved back into their house eventually, but not before the city helped reinforce their windows and install a little camera above their door. Moore made sure they understood they could call him any time, for any reason. At Randy's hearing, Leo testified via video. Tiny suit jacket, hair combed within an inch of his life. Judge asked him if he was scared. "A little," he said. "But Mr. Jake said being brave is when you're scared and you do the right thing anyway." Then I had to bite the inside of my cheek hard enough to taste blood not to lose it. In the end, Randy took a plea. Too much evidence, too many witnesses. He'll be sitting in a cell for a long time, thinking about the day his grudge against one picky driver turned into a stack of felony charges. Iron line, they got hammered but not killed. Dot slapped them with a consent decree that might as well have been a new Bible. Mandatory third-party inspections, random audit days, revamp of their maintenance program, formal protection for drivers who refuse unsafe equipment. And one more thing. They called me into the office on a Tuesday. This time, no certified letter. Just Mike and Dale sitting behind the desk looking like kids about to apologize for knocking out a neighbor's window. "We were wrong," Mike said before I could even sit down, "about a lot." Dale slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a reinstatement letter, full back pay from the day they'd suspended me, an apology in stiff corporate language that still felt good to read, and an offer. Fleet Safety Liaison, the title said, half driving, half training. Job would be to run safety meetings, serve as the point of contact between drivers and maintenance, and, here's the kicker, report directly to ownership and Dot, not to the shop. "You want me to be your hall monitor," I said. "We want you to be the guy who keeps this from happening again," Mike said quietly. "We need someone the drivers trust. They already talked to you. We'd like to make that official." I looked at the offer. The pay bump wasn't insane, but it was solid. The real value was the leverage, written authority to lock a unit out of service without fear of retaliation. "What about Randy's old position?" I asked. "Who's running the shop?" "New hire," Dale said. "Woman from a bigger carrier with a reputation for being meaner than Doty when it comes to safety. You'll like her." I mulled it over for a long beat. Part of me wanted to laugh in their faces, take my reinstatement and go run freight for somebody who'd never tried to put a knife in my back. But another part of me, the part that had dragged me through all this in the first place, thought about all the guys in that room at the town hall, the ones who'd looked relieved when somebody finally said out loud what they'd all been living with. "If I take this," I said slowly, "I'm not babysitting your image. I'm not smoothing things over when DOT comes by. I'm the guy who hits the brakes when something's wrong, even if it costs you money." "We know," Mike said. "That's why we're asking you." I sighed. "Then I've got a few conditions. Mark would have been proud of me. We negotiated. Hard, written whistleblower protections, direct line to Angela's office if I saw anything that smelled like the old days. A small fund set aside to cover motel rooms for drivers who had to sit on a bad unit instead of hauling. When it was done, we shook hands. On my first day back in the yard, drivers clapped. Someone had taped a paper sign to my locker that said "Web Rule" as a joke, after the nickname Angela had given my original complaint in her report. I kept it. As for Leo, a month after the sentencing, Iron Line hosted a little barbecue in the yard. Nothing fancy. Burgers, hot dogs, kids running around between trailers. Angela showed up. More, too. They presented Leo with a certificate that said Citizens Bravery Award and a little patch shaped like a shield. Then Mike took the mic, cleared his throat, and announced something that made Maria's knees buckle. "In partnership with our insurance company and some matching funds from the state," he said, "we're setting up a small education fund in Leo's name. When he turns 18, there'll be enough there for trade school, community college, something to help him start his adult life on better footing. Consider it a down payment on the life he protected here." Leo looked at me, eyes wide. "Does this mean I'm part trucker now?" he whispered. I laughed. "You've got better instincts than half the guys out here. Yeah, kiddo, you're one of us." Days turned into weeks. I split my time between the road and the classroom. Instead of just griping in the break room, I stood up there and walked rookies through what happens when you ignore a little defect. I played the footage, sanitized with permission, and watched their faces as they saw the hooded figure under my truck. "This is why you write things up," I'd say. "This is why you don't let anybody talk you into rolling when something feels wrong. Because at the end of the day, nobody cares about your schedule more than the people who'll miss you if you don't make it home." Sometimes, when I'd fuel up at that same island, I'd still feel a little shiver, imagining the alternate timeline where Leo kept walking, eyes on his phone, never looked under my truck. In that timeline, I'm a name in a crash report, a unit involved, a statistic. In this one, I'm alive. I've got a wife who still nags me about my cholesterol, a half-decent back, and a job that lets me fight for other drivers instead of just myself. Every so often, Leo's bus route brings him by the yard. He'll hop off, wave, yell, "Don't start it," as a joke. Never fails to get a laugh, even from the new shop manager. The camera's still rolling, and everyone knows it. Thing is, the camera wasn't what saved me. The bomb squad wasn't what saved me. Not even Doty. It was a kid with a backpack, standing in the cold, willing to raise his voice when something didn't look right. The rest of it, footage, lawyers, town halls, that's just what happens when the right people finally listen. So if you're listening to this while you're rolling through the night, staring at the glow of your dash, and wondering if anybody has your back out there, remember this. Sometimes justice takes the long way round, bouncing through yards and courtrooms and meetings, but every now and then it shows up in steel-toed boots and a work shirt, in a dusty shop cam no one remembered, and in the eyes of a kid who refuses to look away. Subscribe if you want to hear how a random kid's warning and one dusty shop cam blew the whole Sabotage wide open, and how truckers like us get justice the hard way.